Joining me now is Assistant House Democratic Leader and Biden re-election campaign co-chair, Congressman Jim Clyburn. It's always good to see you. Thank you very much, Congressman.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, how concerned do you think the Biden campaign should be about the political fallout from lifting Title 42?
Well, all of us are very, very concerned about this. As you know, there's a big contradiction existing here. All week, I've been visited by people from my congressional district wanting us to do something about visas. They need people in various occupations to come to the country, but we want to do it orderly and legally. And so that's the conflict here. How do we balance these things out? And I always look to Representative Escobar and Cuellar for leadership and guidance on this issue, and they have been doing a good job of keeping our caucus informed and in touch with what we ought to be doing.
I know this is a failed immigration policy that goes back decades and decades. It's bipartisan, but it's now right in Joe Biden's lap in a re-election year. And it's not something you're going to be able to fix very easily. So is there a way to mitigate it, or is this just something you're going to have to deal with? It's a human tragedy, most importantly.
It is a tragedy, but we are going to deal with it as best we can. I think that the Homeland Security Secretary said to us on yesterday that we look for some chaotic situations to occur as we close out this particular phase, which will happen around midnight tonight, and a new policy will be in place starting tomorrow. And anytime you start anything new, there'll be some kinks that you'll have to work out, and I suspect we'll have that situation here starting tomorrow. But let's hope that we can get this done in a way that people will remain compassionate and do it as efficiently and effectively as we possibly can.
Let me ask you about a couple of things that the Speaker said today. He said he will not back George Santos' re-election, but he's not going to push him out of the House, not until the charges and the trial are processed. So, and there's plenty of precedent of Democratic leaders letting their party members stay on after indictment through a trial. Is that the appropriate measures now?
Well, I don't think that anything that the Speaker has said thus far goes outside of what has been tradition here in the House. People are always presumed innocent until proven guilty, and we have to get the proof. Now, there are a lot of accusations going around about Mr. Santos, some of which I believe, some of which I think may not be all that accurate. But we have a process. We'll go through the process, and we'll see what the judicial process will yield. I don't want anybody to jump to conclusions about Mr. Santos or anybody else. Let the process work, and then let us take action.
Let's talk about the debt limit then, because the Speaker also said that the President of the United States does not want a deal. He wants a default. Your reaction to that?
Look, nothing could be further from the truth. This president has made it very, very clear. His entire administration has made it clear. All of us have been saying default is the worst possible thing that could happen to this country. You see what happened the last time we came close to it. We went right up to the edge, and we saw what happened to the markets. You saw what happened to our credit rating, and we cannot afford for that to take place this time. So if you get close, and this kind of thing can happen, what will happen if you have a default? So the president does not want a default, and he doesn't want us to risk the full faith and credit of the United States, because that would be catastrophic.
Well, in 2011, you were one of several Democrats urging then-President Obama to invoke the 14th Amendment during that debt limit crisis. Should that option now be on the table?
Yes, I think so. The president is responsible for making sure that the full faith and credit of the United States is not jeopardized. And if Congress will not act, in this instance the House of Representatives, maybe he should take the actions that are necessary. As you know, I am a big proponent of executive authority. I stand here in the House because of an executive order. The Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order, integrating the armed services and the executive order. And so I do believe that the things can get done by executive order, and then let them play out in the courts. So I would hope that the president will take executive action if the House refuses to do its job.
And Congressman, last night we saw in a town hall meeting with a very pro-Trump crowd that he just commandeered that stage with a lot of the lies, frankly, that he's been telling for several years now, starting with the election. So do you think that the White House is underestimating his power in a general election?
Well, I cannot say whether or not they're underestimating it, but I think we should not underestimate it. We see how skillful the ex-president is in these kinds of settings, but we also know that he is very challenged when it comes to the truth. And I do believe that the truth is important. It is the way we all interact with each other. We cannot have a good, successful government if we do not act on the facts. And this ex-president is devoid of facts. Most of what he says, most of what he lives is just fiction. And so we cannot let that be the order of the day. But don't underestimate the fact that a lot of people have bought into this foolishness, and we have to stay focused, and we have to be determined to stay connected with the American people. I think the president has been doing a good job, and we must continue to help him do a good job.